Right, come back to this in just a moment. Let's get an update first on a surprise visit by President Vladimir Putin to the occupied Ukrainian city of Mariupol. Dr. Samuel Greene joins me to discuss what we should take from this surprise event. Professor of Russian politics and author of Putin versus the People, the Perilous Politics of a Divided Russia. Professor, good to speak to you this afternoon. Thank you for joining us on the show.
Yeah.
It is, as I understand it, President Putin's first visit anywhere near the front line in Ukraine.
Sure.
What should we read into the timing of it and the significance of it, in your view? Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Thank you for the invitation. I think, look, what we should probably take from it is that Putin has some concerns, right? He has had to pivot over the last several months, really the last year or so, right, from a stance in which he was expecting to win this war, very quickly, to a stance in which he thought that maybe he could sort of skate by without most Russians paying too much attention to the war, right, to one in which he's really had to try to convince his population to dig in for the long haul. To be fair, he's got all of state television and a lot of other things on his side in making that argument, right? But most of what he's tried to tell people in recent months has been, a story of threat and danger, right? He's talked about Russia being at war against the rest of the world. He's talked about this as an existential conflict, one that Russia cannot afford to lose. But he seems to need to show that maybe there are some good aspects to this as well, right? So that he's gone to Crimea just the other day, just on route really to Mariupol to show that this is part of something that Russians were very happy about in 2014. He essentially stood in front of a Potemkin village in Mariupol to show that there is some kind of reconstruction going on, that there are people who were ostensibly very happy to see him there. I think we can take from it, a sign that he feels like he has to shift the narrative at home.
And that's a sign of the pressure that he is under back in Moscow. Of course, there is an election next year, not a free and democratic one in the sense we know it, but a sense perhaps that the inner circle around Vladimir Putin isn't once as sort of safe and secure as perhaps he felt it might have been a couple of years ago.
I think that's probably right. Look, you're absolutely right that Putin doesn't face the same kind of election that Joe Biden would face or Rishi Sunak would face, but nonetheless, right, it is something that he needs to win, and in fact, he needs to win it not with 51% of the vote, but in order to maintain this picture of consensus that his legitimacy in Russia relies on, right, he needs to win that vote with something upwards probably of 70%. That tends to be what the Kremlin aims for. Now, they can manufacture that, they can manipulate that, right? But at the end of the day, he does need public sentiment to be, broadly pointing in the right direction. And this is a sign, I think, that he feels like he needs to invest in that. As well as to be seen, look, people are aware, people with the pictures of Zelensky in fatigues, going right up to the front lines in Bakhmut, right, will be visible to Russians, right? The pictures of Biden going to Kiev will be visible to Russians. And if the only thing about Putin that's visible is him sitting in a gilded hall in the Kremlin, right, that difference will not entirely be ignored.
I was going to ask you about that. We're far more used to seeing him, meters away from anybody else, sort of in this totally separate place from other human beings. Here he is out and about meeting people in another country. Do you think part of it could be to try to dispel any myths that have arisen about his own health, Professor?
It's possible. I don't know, really what's been driving things. Look, he is very security conscious, and probably for good reason. He has also been, what seems to be very COVID conscious, and maybe also not without reason. But I think he's been under some pressure from his political advisors for some time to become more visible. It's something that he has resisted. But again, I think the fact that he now seems to have given in to that advice and to that pressure signals that maybe he is a little bit more concerned about his public image than he used to be.
Really interesting. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Samuel Greene, Professor of Russian Politics and author of Putin versus the People, the Perilous Politics of a Divided Russia.